Round 14 of the URC saw bitter local derbies inject a huge amount of uncertainty into the race for eight. We're going to talk about all of it and the winners and losers from the latest round of United Rugby Championship here on the URC Rewind. Let's start the show. I am joined this evening currently by South African Alan and That Caolan. Good evening, gents.
Hi guys.
Good evening.
We are hoping that policeman Ben will join us at some point. We hope you're okay, Ben, if you're out there. But yeah, before we get into the show, just a bit of housekeeping to do. This is sadly for us, South African Alan's last show with us for the foreseeable. Alan, you're going to take some time away to focus on some other things.
Yeah, I've got a few things going on with nothing serious or negative, but I've got a few opportunities and courses that I need to take on board for my career progression. So unfortunately, the time it takes to do those courses and the time I have available means that it'll primarily be when we would be doing the pod. And I'd rather let you guys find someone to take my place for a bit. I mean, hopefully not permanently, and hopefully I'll be back. But it's just I have the next year, and so it's going to be quite hectic for me. And I've really had loads of fun with everyone doing it, and I hope to be back one day. But it's just the case that at the moment the timing is just not really right for me to continue on the pod.
Yeah, it's fully understandable, mate. Fully understandable. So for anybody who's listening in and maybe is a South African fan or watching us on YouTube and is a South African rugby fan and has always fancied a bit of podcasting, then get in touch because we are hereby looking for a new South African host. It doesn't matter who you're a fan of, you don't need to be a Lions fan. You can be a fan of any of the franchises. And if you fancy coming on a podcast and talking about them and the other three every single week, then get in touch. You can even be a Cheetahs fan, I suppose, or you can be vaguely South African.
I suppose the key requisite would be that you're not a fan of any of the other teams.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Don't be a Connacht fan and trying to talk about that. That won't work. But if you are a South African rugby fan, get in touch with us. Either leave a comment to this YouTube video or get in touch with URR podcast at URC podcast on Twitter. Drop that a DM and we'll get in touch and we'll see about sorting something out. So good luck and I hope to see you then. Right, let's talk about some actual rugby that actually happened. So the weekend began in sensational fashion with Ulster taking on the Stormers in a topsy-turvy game, I think it's fair to say. Caolan, as the Irish voice on the podcast and the Irish team was the eventual winners, well, I'll let you start off, but 38 points to 34 officially classes it as unserious. What did you make of this one?
There's only one place that I could start on this particular weekend, and that is that 17 points to nil is the most dangerous lead in rugby. Not once, but twice has that been squandered. And I was certainly at a Heineken Cup final where that went to begging as well, but that's just because I'm feeling in that kind of mood. Look, a huge win for Ulster. Absolutely huge. There's a lot of games now in the back end of the season that are going to feel like relegation six pointers, to use the kind of Premier League phrase. And this is definitely one of them. Yes, the Stormers came away with 2 points, which is likely to have an effect on the table come the end of the season. But for Ulster just to get over the line and to get this victory from 17 points down, like so many different talking points. Like, how good was Sasha? How good was Jack Murphy on the other side? We had cards, we had tries that were questionable. Some dodgy tackles, some strange calls. You had a bit of everything. It was a bit unserious. Both teams' tackle success below 80% is kind of funny as well. When we're literally,
I hadn't
like,
seen
say,
that yet. I was
below,
hidden by the little speech box.
yeah, literally below 80. I'm just like, oh, it's unserious. And then you see that, and it's like, okay, that makes sense now. But no, I know an unbelievable kind of humdinger type game. Not the type of performance from either side you want to see coming into the back end of the season when they're going to have to, roll up their sleeves and get victories on the board. But I think both sides would be somewhat happy. I think insofar as Ulster got their 5 points, they'll take that. The Stormers got their 2 points. They'd have taken that on Thursday. They wouldn't have taken that at what, quarter to 8 on Friday night when they were 17-0 up or however long it took them. But that's just the way it goes. And it's as it feels like a seismic result in terms of that race for the top 8, or race to the 8, I believe is the official hashtag.
Yes, hashtag race to 8. Alan, the Stormers were well in this game, and like Caolan said, were well in the lead at one point. Where do you think it went wrong?
I think their structures, I think indiscipline definitely was a key factor. I think maybe there was an element of complacency once they got to 17-0 up. Obviously, there was a few players that came back from injury. Very surprising that they went up so quickly. Obviously, there were a few Ulster errors in the beginning that the Stormers capitalized on. When they scored the second try, I did think that they were going to win the game. I was very surprised that they seemed to have good game management. They kept the scoreboard ticking over. Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu with these drop kicks. They looked controlled. They looked pretty, calm. And then it all just fell apart again. And it's just very disappointing when it's your captain getting red carded, and it was the captain, I think, who got red carded, and you don't want to be questioning discipline of teams at this stage of the season. I think that, like Caolan said, I agree. I think the Stormers will take the 2 points, and they'll go home, because I think they've got quite a few games in Cape Town now, if not the rest of their games at home. So looking at the opposition they'll be playing, the South African teams normally finish off quite strong at the end of the season, and I think the Stormers are 10th at the moment, so they're actually in a good place for the top 8, but it's going to be really tough to find out for them to go now and really push on for the title, I guess you could say. I think they have improved. We've all seen improvements, but it's those glaring errors and the lack of game temperament which is costing them, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think first thing that I'd say, I watched the second half of this, is if Sasha wasn't playing, they would have lost by 20. He was everything to them. He was, yes, he got a very, very silly yellow card, but he was fantastic in this game, I thought. Especially, I love the way he kicks the ball in open play. And I love the way he shapes the body and angles the ball and just pulls out loads of different swervy kicks and things like that. And there were times when I thought that I was watching the Stormers attack. I was like, this is going nowhere. This is hopeless. And then he'd just do something and then they'd score. So I think there's that. Caolan, I'm going to ask you about Ulster injuries in a second, but I thought that one player who's been constant for them all season is Mikey Lowry. I thought he had a very, very good game, created loads of opportunities, and has been kind of the big shining light throughout their season. But now they're getting some injured players back. Do you think the kind of rocky patches behind them? Because we were saying that Ulster were dead and buried at one point.
Yeah, no, for sure. I kind of went a week too early on sticking the knife in them, didn't I? It was as strict as I've ever been after they won, and now that they've won again, I kind of have to dial it back, and I'll hold my hands up. I'm not sure how confident I would have been this time last week when calling this game. Firstly, on Mike Lowry, he's had a really good season. Like, as you said, they're constant. They've had Stockdale, Balakoon, Werner Koch, Ethan McElroy, Zach Ward. All these lads have spent time on the sidelines this year, bar Mike Lowry, who I think has only missed one of their 18 games this season. That's right. Yeah, 4 European and 14 URC games. And he's played 17 so far. He was excellent again. I thought Jacob Stockdale was brilliant, to be honest. I have a kind of hot take a little bit later on in terms of Jacob Stockdale and other Irish wingers, but I thought he was really, really sharp in this game. Again, Zach Ward took his try well. Former 7-star, former Olympian, was probably Ireland's best player at the 2024 Olympics for the Sevens. And there is an element of just kind of coming into form at the right time. Now, regardless, I still look at that Ulster team and I think they could really do with Ian Henderson and Cormac Isachuku being fit. And even if they had won their last 10 games in a row, I probably still think that, because they are level raisers in that Ulster team. James Hume missed this game as well. And I think when you add in all that bit of context, like Ravenhill isn't the fortress it used to be, which a lot of venues I feel like are not the fortress they used to be. Again, another conversation for another day maybe, when we're trying to fill time over the summer. But no, it was it was an impressive performance from Munster. And even Jack Murphy, so easy to overlook him. He was only under 20 last year, not the most athletic guy, not the most physical guy. He's quite small and diminutive in stature. Played really well, took his try well, bossed the backline around. I think Aidan Morgan, to his credit, started his time at Ulster quite sharp. has had some kicking issues, probably doesn't like not being the guy in control of the team in terms of, the 9 or 10, whether you're off 9 or off 10. But Jack Murphy seems to just taken the I don't know what the phrase is. But he's just risen to the occasion. With that Ulster shirt, I wouldn't be surprised if they back him from here on in. Yes, he's the coach's son. Let's get the jokes out of the way there if you want to, but he's been really good as well. And I'll judge Ulster better in a few weeks' time. Like obviously they've got Bordeaux next week. If they win that, it's a big if. They got Munster or La Rochelle away from home the following week. So a lot of tough asks ahead. They've got Leinster in Dublin to come yet. They've got Edinburgh away in the last game of the season. But you have to clap them and off the field and give them a clap on the back, because that's a really good win for them. And as you say, guys like Mike Lowry played well. Don't think Stuart McCluskey had his best game in an Ulster shirt and his 200th appearance. Unbelievable achievement, by the way. 200 games for anyone is an unbelievable achievement. But really, really, a really good Ulster performance besides for about, again, 60 minutes of that game. They were asleep for the first 10, 15, got their way back into it and kicked on.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on to the next game. Let's talk about Sharks versus Leinster. So, Alan, this should be on paper one of the marquee games of the URC, with a squad that is the majority of the Springboks team and the majority of the Ireland team. Now, it transpired that Leinster didn't just not only send not many of the Ireland internationals, apart from Cian Healy, and I might be forgetting one. They also didn't send anything like as strong a team as they sent to the Bulls last week. So a 7-10 scoreline, you'd have to say that that's a shocker for the Sharks. I mean, we've been, I was going to say we've been harsh to them. We haven't been harsh to them. We've been very critical of them, rightly so, and they're just proving all of our criticisms correct.
Yeah, I think so. I think I mean, the players, even with bad coaching, you'd like to think that they could get this game. They should be winning games like this in that heat, and in that weather, the heat with the humidity. One thing I will say is that it feels to me, as a South African supporter, that the Northern Hemisphere teams seem to be adapting a lot better to referees and also to the conditions in South Africa. And South African teams are still not quite adapting to conditions as quickly as I would like to see. We'll talk about a game later on where that was so evident. But the Sharks had opportunities, very few opportunities, but handling errors atrocious. For a team like that to be making that many handling errors, and they just seemed lost, didn't they? They were really, really bad. And it's disappointing, for a team in fourth position, you want to see them grind out these wins. And even if it's a tough game and you only win by like 5 or 10 points, you want to see the teams that are in the top four. I suppose the scoreline indicates that it might have been a top four, game, but nothing about that game was attractive to watch, apart from the grit that Leinster showed. And I think it was a really embarrassing performance by the Sharks. Probably one of the worst performances. They've had worse performances. That's not fair. So they are playing Leinster, a second team or third team. I'm sure someone will correct me again. But very disappointed as a South African supporter. The Sharks don't look like they're anywhere near a top four team based on that performance. And it's disappointing, like you said, with the amount of quality they have in the team. And then even when they scored the try, it didn't seem to give them any boost at all, So I do want to mention Andre Esterhuizen, who I think tried all game. He tried really, really hard, but I don't think he's specifically known for his, his, like I would say, line breaks and stuff like that. He's a physical player, and it was obvious that they were trying, but overall, a disappointing performance from the team.
Yeah, Andre Esterhuizen was the one coming back where I thought, when I saw that on the team sheet, I thought, okay, when seeing those two teams on paper, I thought there should only be one winner here. So to not only to like lose, but to only score 7 points at home is where you don't see that very often. You don't see that very often at all. And the questions have been John Plumtree for ages. I think the thing that's keeping him in his job is that he's technically won the last 3 trophies that were available to him in terms of the Challenge Cup, the Currie Cup, and the South African Shield. But I don't think anyone could say that he's getting the most out of that squad. And, I don't really understand why, obviously with Franco Smith being a South African coach, and we'll talk about Glasgow later, he's been linked to the Wales job, he's been linked to the Scotland job. But then the team that seems to be chasing him that at club level the hardest, from what I've heard, is the Bulls. Lots of Bulls fans seem to think that he's going to end up there one day. So why the Sharks are spending the money getting in more Lions players again this season rather than just going, you know what, we could probably afford to lose a couple of Springboks if it meant bringing in someone like Franco Smith. It's just a strange way to run your organization.
But even when they do score a try, so Leinster score and you're thinking, okay, here we go, they'll come right, and then they score a try off a maul, but they're going away from. It's like they took it for granted that they'd scored a try. We're on our way back. From off the back of a maul. Do that again. Just keep doing it. It's just very, very, very erratic from the Sharks. Very disappointing. Yeah,
massively so, massively so. So, Caolan, next we're going to talk about Connacht versus Munster. So this game was intriguing because of
not to get my take on Leinster. No.
Oh, all right. Okay, what's your take on Leinster?
I think it's an unbelievable. Like, it's a great result. Like, I'm not going to. I feel I'm just going to go full for it now. But like, you were trying to silence me. You thought I wasn't going to be nice to them. No, like this is a great result. Like, I know we have the Sharks as like peak fraud squad and all that for quite some time now. Even long before we even started doing this podcast, I feel like. But this is a great result for Leinster down in Durban. Rotated side. Like Max Egan again leading from the 4, but like, yeah, Keane Healy was there, Tom Clarkson was there, Jimmy O'Brien was there, and then your Deegans, your Frawleys, your Ross Burns. But like, it was a largely inexperienced Leinster team. Alan Spicer debut, Oliver Coffey has only played twice, Fintan Gunn's first start, Mangan and Deeney both under the age of 22, maybe 23. Lee Barron and Michael Milne, 2 of the more experienced guys in that squad, only just back from injury. It's a great result. Say what you like about the Sharks. It's massive. And I think ultimately it has changed how I think it has changed the race for top spot now, ultimately. Leinster can probably slip up once and still get top from here, which is kind of annoying. I was kind of hoping for a Leinster Glasgow shootout in Dublin on the final weekend, but them's the breaks. Great result for them. Anyways, to Munster.
Yeah, to Connacht Munster then. So before we talk about the actual game, this game was played in a special place. So could you tell us a bit about the venue for this fixture?
So for those who do know their way around Ireland, this was played outside of Galway, up in Mayo in Castlebar, and the home of Mayo GA in McHale Park in Castlebar. The significance is just the fact that for up until 2007, there was a rule in GA code that foreign sports, i.e. rugby, soccer, etc., could not be played on GA grounds. That rule was abolished. The famous Rule 42, as it's known in Ireland, that rule was abolished. That allowed, at the time, it was so that the Irish national team would not have to play games away from Ireland. They could move into Croke Park in the short term. But now they've looked into it and they said, look, let's try and get Leinster into Croke Park. Let's try and get Munster into Páirc Uí Chaoimh, which is in Cork. And then now Connacht have looked at McHale Park, holds 25,000, got a good atmosphere. An absolutely miserable afternoon.
The official attendance, I think, was something like 27,000.
Yeah, which I thought the capacity was 25, but
yeah, so did I.
I do believe them. But to be fair, because like it's all unreserved seating and certain sections can be closed off at certain times and all that. But no, like it's great to see. Like for any Irish listeners, I would be in the firm beliefs. I think we are almost wasting land in this country by having this has to be rugby, this has to be soccer, this has to be GA. I want to see more shared grounds. It's what I want to see personally. Not in favour of artificial pitches, though, even though that might be the way forward as well. That's another conversation. But this is great to see. Like Munster going back to Páirc Uí Chaoimh at the end of the year for a European Cup game. Leinster will be in Croke Park next weekend against Quins and probably on their European Cup run. Or maybe just the semi-final. I'm not 100% sure. So absolutely, it's a step forward. And I think we got a game that matched for about 20 minutes. I think this was largely one-way traffic for the guts of an hour. Munster were brilliant. Like, bar that late flurry of Connacht scores, 3 tries, one of which chalked off. I think Munster were by far the better team in this game, to be honest. I had a bit of a nervous laugh when Simon Zebo said Munster by 11 pre-game, but I think that would have been a fair reflection if Munster had won by 11. For I know they won by 6, but it was just that kind of game. Connacht, to their credit, they fought back really well. Munster made an awful lot of really silly mistakes, like the Niall Scallon card, stupid.
The crowd were really into it by the end.
They were, yeah, absolutely. And I think I may have touched on it here last week. I'm not sure if I got into it, but that part of Connacht is a big rugby area. Like, you've got Castlebar, Westport, you've got Ballina, Sligo, which is different county but same kind of region. Got the likes of Craigs, Ballyhaunis, a lot of really strong rugby clubs up there with a lot of history, a lot of tradition. And I think we got the spectacle that deserved. Maybe not the result as far as Connacht are concerned, but a great spectacle and a great occasion. I still think, watched it and watched it back briefly this morning. Munster were the better team. They will be. I think there's one moment in that game that was the turning point. Yes, we had cards, we had the likes, we had knock-ons. It was Munster kicking behind through Crowley. I'm pretty sure it was. I'm not 100% sure. Connacht chased back over their own line. A pop pass goes to Jack Ainger. He knocks it on. Munster recover the ball. They pick the goal. I think it's 3 phases later. Alex Dillon reaches for the line. He's adjusted to have knocked it on. But we don't come back for the advantage. We go for the goal line dropout because it was knocked into in goals. They had the choice. And that's where Connacht kind of started to, we're not out of this. We're not out of this. And credit to them. They're down the field. They got 2 scores. They had the score that should have put them ahead, but Bundyaki with a really reckless clear out, and he'll hold his hand up to that. It's what I don't like about Interbros. I love a good physical game, but an awful lot of the time that line gets crossed a little bit too far from both teams, from all 4 teams. Regardless of who's playing, it happens too often. But that could have been a massive moment in this game. I will say, again, Conor Murray 200th cap, set it for Stuart Bertusky. Again, for anyone, it's an unbelievable achievement. But
I'm kind of surprised it's that few. I would have said he was closer to 300.
Well, he has been on a central contract for years, so he would be minute managed for quite a long time. Craig Casey and Jack Crowley were excellent.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You had your first choice halfback pairing back, and Jack Crowley got official player of the match, which I guess the headline writers, the newspapers picked that one. But yeah, that must have been, that's a huge fillip for you.
Yeah, no, it's a boost. It's a huge boost. Like, Craig Casey is a difference maker. Like, Jack Crowley is as well. Don't get me wrong, but as we kind of talked about with the 9 conversation, there's not a lot of world-class 9s out there. If you have a top-class 9, it makes a difference. And Casey and Crowley just complement their game really well. Tom Ahern played really well as well.
We're showing the Tom Ahern try on the screen. I just want to say this is a fantastic finish. Now, he's a big man, but he had a lot of work to do.
It's also what Crowley does well. So you see him often in that, outside that little 5-meter channel, throwing those pop passes, carrying into contact, throwing an offload. He pops up in those spaces a lot. And it's probably something that Ireland have not used him well in the last kind of year or so, is just getting him into that space, letting him, kind of like what you said about Sasha being everything the Stormers did well. Sometimes when you got a 10 who's not afraid to commit to the line, be aggressive, play on the front foot, just let them do it. It's probably what Ireland failed.
I kind of thought that when Munster got the red card, that was in the first half, wasn't it? It was quite early on.
Yeah,
I thought that Connacht were going to. I thought that they were going to win the game. Did you get a sense that it was going to be more difficult for Munster than what it was?
I think there's always a factor, and I hate playing armchair psychologist because I don't know. There's always a factor that potentially the occasion just got to Connacht and they froze in the moment because that first half was not at the level we'd have expected from them. I should say, because an awful lot of our listeners won't know this because most of our listeners are outside of Ireland, Pete Wilkins, the Connacht head coach, is on sick leave at the moment for apparently it's stress related. That's the rumor, and you wish him all the best, because you just, these things can spiral and you just hope he's all right. But I think one of the big things with Connacht's game plan is, in such a windy game, and this is so funny because Galway, wind.
Yeah, that's
The
what I
kicking
thought.
game
I did say to
isn't
when we were
great.
watching the game, and I said, I've never seen it. It's normally from my memory that like you got rain coming from all directions and stuff. And I
Yeah.
said, I've never seen a drier like Connacht, and no South African has ever seen it dry there. And then there was
It,
like,
it
oh,
was it
yeah.
was wet pre-game. They made up for it. There was an awful lot of ponchos and umbrellas out pre-game, but Connacht's ability to navigate the conditions with their kicking game, probably not helped by the fact that Ioane isn't a great tactical kicker. And I think they may have accidentally found something by potentially moving him to 15. I think he works well as that facilitator. It gets Mac Hansen into kind of more dangerous spaces, as opposed to just being in that third layer of
He
passing.
is good, isn't he?
You know,
He was really trying as well.
my
Mac
thing,
Hansen.
the hot take I was going to take was, I'm a big Mac Hansen fan. I think Mac Hansen's a great player. I think he's probably misused at Connacht because they don't have the pack, they don't have the probably the halfbacks performing at the level, and so on and so forth. The funny thing about it is, though, and you showed that Tom Ahern try, if Jacob Stockdale misses that tackle, that would be flagged as a reason why he shouldn't play for Ireland. And I think it's kind of that thing where it's like, just own it. Like, Mac Hansen has got to make. I know Tom Ahern throws guys aside for a living. You're 1-on-1. You have to make that hit. If that's Ireland, we'd be absolutely tearing our hair out, unfortunately. And I think Hansen played well. But if you're asking me who the former Irish winger this weekend was, I'm probably looking at, Stockdale. I'm probably looking at Tommy O'Brien, who, to his credit, was very good for Leinster as well. It's just one of those things. I think Mac's probably not having a great season, and some of that is somewhat taken on too much of Connacht. So much of their game plan is around him, but probably doesn't utilize him, if you know what I mean. Like, he's still a winger. You can put too much on a winger's shoulders to carry an attacking system, and I think there is too much on his shoulders in that regard. And ultimately on Connacht, I think that's their top 8 race done. They have to go to South Africa yet. They have to go play the Lions and
Yeah, I agree.
the Stormers, I think. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, the Stormers. Next up, focus on Europe. Hopefully to give it a good rattle. I would definitely be making changes for Europe. They've got Cardiff up next at home. I'd be looking at Matthew Devine has to start. Like, Keelan Blade is a great player. He's a Connacht legend. Matthew Devine has to start. JJ Hanrahan probably has to start. I think their back three, they've had a couple of injuries. I'd probably bring in maybe Shane Jennings in there. Maybe Ralston comes back in. I'm not sure. I think Josh Murphy has to start with Keane Prendergast out. And you wish all the best to Keane Prendergast. It was, watching it back, it looked like it was a knee that actually caused him to get concussed, which is just one of those instances. Do you know what I mean? Your clear out can be perfectly legal or perfectly illegal, and you can still, it could be the bit that you don't expect. I want to see Connacht make changes. I want to see them go on a cup run, use that energy. Like that energy we see in the second half, when Devine came on, when Hanrahan came on, when Josh Murphy came on, when Dylan Cheney Martin came on. I think they're the guys you back from here to the end of the season. Your Heffernans, your Blades, your Ioanes, they've shown what they've shown. You're not going to learn anything more about them. Go put it in the hands of the younger guys and give them a rattle, because I'm really confident that Connacht can go on a run in the Challenge Cup from here. But we're not a Challenge Cup podcast. So
That's true. That's true. No, I agree. I think the top 8 hopes are over, unfortunately. Bit of a disappointing one. Anyway, so before I go on and talk about the next game, and before we talk about the other derby of the weekend, just want to remind people that if you're enjoying what you're listening to so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the show. And like I said at the beginning, if you are interested in becoming a podcast host, whether it's as the South African voice on this one, or just generally, if you're into rugby and you have a team that you support, it can be a URC team, it can be whatever. Let us know anyway. We're always on the lookout for new podcast hosts, and loads of us got our careers started here on the Rap YouTube channel and Rap podcasts. So if you fancy it, give us a shout and we'll happily speak to you. Okay, let's talk. I'm going to briefly now talk about Scarlets versus Ospreys. I'm not going to go massively into it because on this YouTube channel, there's going to be loads of other podcasts talking about it. So there's going to be the Scarlets one that I host. Well, not host. I don't host it, but I'm on. There's going to be the Ospreys one talking about it from that point of view. And there's going to be the main Rap podcast talking about it kind of holistically. And there's also going to be the Welsh language podcast, which I'm sure we'll also speak about it as well. So I'm not going to do ages and ages on it. What I will say is this is ultimate proof of the law that in Welsh derbies, the wrong team always wins. The Ospreys have been on cracking form. The Scarlets form has been very disappointing. And coming into this, you kind of thought, like the team that's on a charge here is the Ospreys, and they go 17-0 up. Now I will say that from a Scarlets fan point of view, if I thought the previous two games were bad, I'd say the first quarter of an hour in this game is the worst we've played all season. Like, it was apocalyptically bad, and I couldn't actually watch this game because I was invited out to socialize with human beings. So I came in for the second
What
half,
was
but that's
that like?
it's probably a good thing, because that the first try alone would have given me a cardiac arrest. It was essentially an own try. For people who haven't seen it, Ospreys kick off. Scarlets don't catch it. It bounces. Someone manages to grab it. They kick it to touch behind their own dead ball line. It's a 5 meter line out. I think they actually give away a penalty in the end. It's a 5 meter line out to the Ospreys. I think the Scarlets steal it, but then they catch the ball over their own try line, and they set up a ruck in their own in-goal area, and a Ospreys player just comes around and touches it down. My head would have exploded if I'd have watched that live, so it's probably a good thing that I missed it. But managed to get back into it. The turning point was Scarlets won a scrum on halfway, got a scrum penalty for it from there. Got down into the Ospreys 22, and the Ospreys just had a discipline explosion, got completely on the wrong side of the referee, gave away 2 yellow cards. And the rest is history. It was interesting to see the Scarlets get scrum penalties off the Ospreys. Traditionally, this derby is about Ospreys scrum and maul and Scarlets backs. So to see the Scarlets get the better of the Ospreys in the tights was very encouraging. And just finally, from a Scarlets point of view, I thought the Gareth Davis's last 20 minutes, he played the full 80 again, which is a wider problem in and of itself, but his game management in the last 15 minutes, 20 minutes was absolutely exemplary. Absolutely just did exactly the right thing, kept the Ospreys in their own 22. They could not get out and just saw the game out, which is what we've not been able to do all season. So from an Ospreys point of view, the team that they put out, I thought, wasn't the strongest team. This is the first part of a double header where they play each other again next week in the round of 16 for the Challenge Cup. So maybe the Ospreys were keeping players back for that. But as an Ospreys fan, I don't know if I'd be that happy about that. Putting out a rotated team for a local derby. And yeah, just pleased for I'll tell you who I'm pleased for. I'm pleased for the 11,000 Scarlets fans who packed into Barking Scarlets to watch this one. Best crowd of the season, and a scoreline to back it up. And as Caolan alluded to at the beginning of the podcast, a 17-0 lead is the most dangerous one in rugby. So that's all I'm going to say about Scarlets Ospreys. We've had confirmation, unfortunately, that Policeman Ben is not available. He is safe and well, but he's not available to join us. So did anybody watch Benetton versus Cardiff?
I was watching the Glasgow game, so I didn't. I should have watched that one.
So Benetton versus Cardiff, I'll bring up the stats. So I've seen the highlights of it, and Cardiff got into the lead. They scored 2 tries quite early, but then struggled to score for the rest of the match. Benetton is again kind of stuttering, managed to get the W. It looked like a good crowd out in Treviso, but they managed to get it over the line in the end. The commentators said, and this actually made the highlights, like a draw would have been fair. By all accounts, it wasn't a great game. Thomas Albanose scoring all of Benetton's points technically, because one of their tries was a penalty try. And yeah, just Benetton keeping their race for 8 hopes alive, but only just. Cardiff will be kicking themselves. I'm told that Callum Sheedy missed a couple of kicks, which he has done all season, to be fair. Now, he has had hard kicks, but they're starting to come back to bite a little bit. So I don't know, Caolan, just any general thoughts of Benetton? Are they got something to do to not be also Rans this season, to be honest? We know the head coach is leaving.
Yeah, it's a strange position for Benetton to be in, because they're still they're there. Like, top 8 is there for them yet again. But again, you look at their running: Lions, Stormers away, Glasgow at home, Munster away. Like, phew, is it just like one final sprint before eventually they get lapped at the finish line? Is that is kind of the question? They have the ability. Like, you see, this is the thing with Benetton. We look at this game, and obviously they have a huge game for their club against Cast next weekend, which I feel like will be forgotten, their first ever European knockout game. But this is the game. You're just expecting them. Yeah, Cardiff had a great season, but you're coming to our turf. It's kind of like the Scarlets game at the start of the season. It's the one I always keep coming back to. Team who you are better than them, coming to your ground where you usually put up great performances. Go there, get the job done, win it, show everyone. This is a little bit of a limp victory. Again, Cardiff had a good season, but it's not. I don't think Benetton, even for where they are in the table, have been as impressive as they were last year. That's the thing. And maybe that's us being too harsh on them because they made top 8 last year. But I just don't think they have been as impressive, unfortunately.
No, I completely agree. From a Cardiff point of view, I thought Cam Winnett played well from the highlights that I've seen. He's become a bit of a story of Welsh rugby world with his omission from the Six Nations squad and things. So it'll be interesting to see what happens moving with him going forwards.
It's also frustrating. Like, obviously, this same Cardiff team beat the Lions last week with an intercept try. So, like, to watch, and I didn't watch them, but to know they lost this week is really frustrating from like my own personal point of view, knowing that the Lions had an opportunity against them the week before. Because I don't think that it was a case of them outplaying or being that much better. So it's very frustrating to watch teams. But that's why we watch the URC, and that's why it's such a good league, because anyone can beat anyone in any
Cardiff
given
are a
week.
funny team too, aren't they? Like, because you look at them, they're so high up the table, they're still doing well. They've kind of beaten no one. Like, they've beaten the Dragons twice. They beat Scarlets. No disrespect there, Huw. Obviously they beat the Lions as well. No disrespect there, Alan. But like, Zebre, 2 wins over the Dragons. A comeback victory. Again, I think it was like 17, 18 points. They came back to beat
They were 19-0 down against
19-0
Ulster.
down against Ulster. Scrape past the Lions. And like, if you just base them off being fifth in the table, you're like, yeah, they can absolutely turn over the Ospreys next week. They can probably give Munster a rattle because Munster will probably have to rotate that week. But you also look at it and you're thinking, Ospreys should beat them, realistically. Munster should beat them. And then they go to Bulls and Stormers, where they shouldn't have a chance. But Cardiff have actually got 1 or 2 wins over in South Africa before. So you never know. They're just such a tough team to read. Like, an incredibly difficult team to read.
A very classic case of they're good, but are they good?
Yeah.
Like the table says they're good, but you watch them and you think, are they good? Like you said, I think they've made big progress from last season. I think it's fair to say.
I think all the Welsh teams have, apart from the Dragons. I think they've all done a lot better.
Yeah,
than
we'll
the other
talk about
teams.
the Dragons now then. So obviously with no policeman Ben, the Edinburgh voice isn't here. So I don't have tons to say about Edinburgh. I watched the first half of this. I think it was the Darcy Graham show in the first half, and I thought that their hooker, who I'm sorry his name escapes me, the starting hooker for Edinburgh, who scores this try just now. So let's see if his name pops up on the screen.
No.
His pace really impressed me for this try. From a Dragons point of view, I kind of felt like it was summed up in the first play of the game, where there's a scrum to the Dragons in the Edinburgh half. Aaron Wainwright makes a brilliant break off the back of it, gets up to the 5 meter line. No one with him. So clearly no one knows what to do in the event of a line break. He gets turned over, Edinburgh kick it out. Dragons take a quick line out, and it goes to Huw Anderson. Huw Anderson, who's been the Dragons' best player, Dragons' player of the season so far this season, thinks he sees a crossfield kick and goes for it, executes it terribly. Just poor skill execution. It was a bad decision. It was a bad attempt at it. The Edinburgh player catches the ball on the full, kicks it down. It's 50-22 to Edinburgh, and then Edinburgh score off that resulting line out. And that's just like so Dragonsy, to borrow a turn of phrase. It's the most Dragonsy thing ever. And for all of the chat about the Dragons, and I'm not going to even go close to chat about getting rid of the Dragons from a Welsh point of view, because I think it's just a ridiculous has-been argument. And I've got a pretty serious problem with Sam Warburton on what he's been saying about it. But from a Dragons point of view, the talk is so much about the players, but to me, it's a team that's screaming out for more coaches, because the beginning of the season, they made a big song and dance about how Philo Tier was coming in to support Di Flanagan. And then within a few games of the season, they sacked Di Flanagan and promoted Philo Tier, so they were just back to exactly where they were in terms of the number of coaches. And at least 3 of the Welsh regions have parted ways with a coach within the last 12 months or so and not replaced them, and are essentially working with one fewer coach than what they'd ideally like to do. And so for the Dragons, I think please stop talking about players and start talking about coaches, because I just don't think that the coaching arrangement that they've got down there isn't, I'm not even going to say good enough, just enough, full stop. I think they need more coaches. I think they need extra coaches, because they just look like a team that doesn't know what to do in the scenarios, that a scenario happens on the pitch and they just no one. I feel like in that first half you could pause time, go onto the pitch, ask a Dragons player what's about to happen, and they wouldn't be able to tell you. That's to me is their bigger problem, more than the players at the moment. That's just my opinion.
No, can't disagree. They probably gone backwards this year. I think that lack of identity is one of the reasons. We said at the start of the year, like at the very first show, we were like, be a tough team to play against. Hit that box. Like basically everything that Zebre have become is what we laid at the feet of the Dragons, and they haven't. And I don't like being overly harsh. I understand there is obviously financial constraints and there's just so many different invitations and whatever. And I just think eventually you do, as you said, you have to look at, well, do we have a discernible style of play? No. Are we conceding too many points? Is there, maybe a lack of, I'd never say effort, but like just a general base level? Probably not, and then it goes from there.
Yeah. You brought up Zebre then, so let's talk about them. They have been in great form lately, but they kind of came up against a team that is just better than them. They're not going to be they're not the first team to get a big scoreline off the Bulls, and they won't be the last. But Alan, again, the Bulls season starting to come back on the rails now.
Yeah, I think so. I think the first half was a bit worrying for a lot of Bulls fans, because Zebra didn't go away. They were definitely there, and they were going blow for blow in the initial stages of the game. But I suppose once they seemed to run out of gas a little bit, the Italian players, and then the Bulls just did their thing and just overpowered them. Very obviously, we all know how the Bulls play. We know how they play in Pretoria. So as expected, I think, really, I don't think there's too much to say about a game like that when you've got scores like that. But it was good to see Zebre giving it a go and trying to, score. And they did really well in the beginning.
Drop goal.
Yeah. They were, they're getting used to, again, there was a point when I thought that the Bulls might struggle to get it over the line, because you always get those points in games where, you're thinking, oh, it's going against the Bulls here. But that was, late in the first half. And then when they came back from the break, they obviously just went into like automatic Bull mode and just did their thing. And it's good to see from a South African perspective, that there's at least one team that's consistent and starting to show the style of play that we know them to have. Really good.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Bulls and thinking about how, if you go back to the Rainbow Cup days, they got to the final of the Rainbow Cup and lost it. Then they got to the final of the first URC against the Stomers of all people and lost that. And then I can't really remember what happened in the season previous to that. I want to say they got to a semi-final, and then they got to the final again. So they're, in a weird way, they're the URC's most consistent team, most consistently competitive team. They just don't have the silverware to show it.
Yeah. I think I'm sure they'll win the competition at some point, but they've had a couple of fly halves that they've tried out over periods of time. Obviously, Willie Leroux makes a huge difference. And they did, and there was a couple of players that came back. Norkia came back in this game.
That's massive.
They did have a couple of injuries, which Elric Lowe is still out, obviously, and Cameron Hanekom out as well. So good to see that Nokia was back, really good. And they just did their thing. They know how each other play. They trust each other, and they've got an awesome stadium and a good, solid fan base.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good to see, like you said, a South African team being kind of the flag bearers. Although I'm sure plenty of other South African fans won't like the fact that it is the Bulls. But like I said, deceptively consistent. I'd love to go back and count since the South Africans joined the Northern Hemisphere, how many league games have the Bulls actually lost? Because I bet it's not many. I bet it's not many. So it's just an interesting thing that I shall look up away from the podcast. Okay, and the last game of the weekend, Alan, as your swan song, you get to talk about your Lions. So tell us all about what happened up in Scotstoun.
Well, obviously, the fact that I notified you guys I was leaving the pod, I think the Lions decided to, you know, like Glasgow decided to send me off with solid, like, you know, what a horrible performance. I think they had issues with the weather before the game. Didn't they have to do something with one of the stands or get rid of some of the seats or something? I think the weather had a real issue with the stands. It was shaking everywhere and the wind, and the Lions definitely did not adapt at all to the conditions. You know, and this gets frustrating because I didn't think we were going to win the game. I went from thinking, you know, the first like 10 minutes, oh, we're not going to win this game. Maybe we can get a bonus point. Maybe we can get a couple of bonus points. And every 10 minutes after that, it became a case of we're not even going to get that. And then obviously second half, I thought, let's see if we can at least try and get a couple of tries. And it just didn't happen for them. So really, really horrible performance. And what's most frustrating about this game is that there's a lack of, they don't adjust to the conditions or to the play. So they're constantly trying to kick the ball very high. They're not kicking the ball low. They're not doing any grubber kicks, trying to make distance, trying to clear the ball by kicking it really high into the air. The ball's landing behind them. Line out throws where you're setting up line outs and you're throwing it not even nearly straight. Just I don't know what else to say about it really. This was probably a game which was as expected as well from a South African point of view. The only thing I would say in the Lions working in their favour is that they've got quite a few home games against some relatively weaker teams in the standings. So I wouldn't say they're weak teams. I'd say they're probably some of the weaker teams have to now travel to Johannesburg, along with a couple of strong teams. So that should hopefully get us into the top 8. But looking at the current performances, where we were like a month ago, if you think about, you know, we had 2 games in hand, we were like 6th. And to sit here now after 14 rounds and be like the 13th, I think it is, that's not good enough. And something has to change. And then at the same time, you know, you're losing a couple of your players now as well. Next season again, this is something else, and one of them is going to the Sharks again. So basically, you watch the Sharks play, and you see all these see all these Lions players. So it's just the nature of the beast, I'm afraid, in South African rugby. These players, a lot of these players, like, will come and it's their second chance to come play for the Lions, or they've got a lot of youth players, and then when an opportunity comes, I understand why you would move on. I do see, because it's not the most, you know, aesthetic place to play your rugby in Johannesburg and stuff like that. So I do understand, but as a Lions fan, or as a Scarlets fan, you'd probably understand it as well. It can be very frustrating when
the Ospreys sign at least 2 of our players every year.
Yeah, so yeah, very, very frustrating. But Glasgow looked polished, sharp, played what was in front of them, very powerful.
They're just an excellently coached team.
And
I know I say it every week, but it's just true.
That South African prop, I forget his name now. Really, really good player. Yeah.
No, not Schumann. No, he plays for Edinburgh.
Macbeth or something like that.
Oh yeah, Macbeth. Yeah, the Scottish player, as we must call him. The one Glasgow player it piques my interest is Jamie Dobie, because he was playing on the wing in this game, but he's primarily a scrum half, I understand, but he kind of alternates between the two, which is probably why Franco Smith likes him so much, because they can flick between. Well, it just makes the 6-2 work. And I think Jamie Dobie was on the bench for Scotland as well, who also plays 6-2. So that's just he's 23. He's played well from what I've seen of him. He scored a good try in this game. I'm just interested to see what he turns into, because that's very modern as a scrum half, and he looks physically like there's something to him. So he's just a player that's I'm interested to see if he goes on and does much in his career, because he's, like I said, a very modern style of player to have a 9 come wing. I'm sure he could probably do a job in other places as well. But yeah, Glasgow, march on. Just a great team. just a great team. This is, they remind me of 2017, 2018 Scarlets in terms of
Sorry, just to point out
good streak.
that Nathan Macbeth guy was born in Valcom in South Africa.
Oh, right. You wouldn't think that with a name like that, would you?
No, but he
Malcolm
played.
Macbeth.
He did play for the Lions in Super Rugby. So there you go. You're
Really?
welcome. Yeah.
Well, I never. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. It was every day is a school day. All right, then. Before we wrap up, Caolan, as we do, we just like to mention the Women's Six Nations. So, explain to me why everyone was so gassed about Ireland beating Italy today.
Well, it's first Ireland win over Italy since 2022. Am I right in saying 23, 24? Yeah, 2022. And I think they may have lost the World Cup qualifier in there as well, potentially. Really solid win for Ireland. Put 50 points in them. It's from what I could tell, they're probably their second most points ever scored in a Six Nations game. Second biggest away win ever. The last time they did that, they won the championship on the same day. It's their second away win in the Six Nations since 2019, but the one in 2021 was technically neutral venue, even though it was in Cardiff against Wales. But it was COVID years. Just really impactful performance. Ireland raced into a very early lead. They were 19-5 up very early on. They even Italy's second try. Italy scored 2 tries on the day. Was pretty dubious, to be honest. I'm not sure. It was 40 points to 5 at that stage. I'm not sure you give it if it was 19 all with 5 minutes to go or anything like that. But no, Ireland looked really good. I think World Cup year, obviously, a lot of excitement. Again, I keep telling Irish fans, tickets are so cheap. You can get tickets for Ireland against New Zealand for £15.
I didn't get them in the end, but I applied for tickets. It was in Salford. It's what I think it was. I can't remember. I think it was Wales, Scotland, and I want to say Canada, someone else.
Australia?
I can't remember who. Might have been Fiji. A double header, like 20 quid.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
I have England, Australia, and Ireland, New Zealand in Brighton in the final round of pool stages. £50 for essentially 4 tickets, two games, 2 tickets. Where would you be going? This team is so much fun to watch. They're young, they're fresh, they've got great energy in terms of on the field and off it. Some absolute stars. Again, we could talk about Aoife Wafer for hours if we wanted to. We won't. Probably not the game to do so. Anna McGann scored her first test try, and then her second test try, and then her third test try because she got a hat trick on the day as well. Really good from Ireland. Of course, this is a cross URC game technically, so obviously we're going to spend a little bit more time in it. But look, Ireland playing the next.
Is that allowed?
Yeah. No. The try. No, sorry, I looked away for a second. Absolutely not. But Ireland playing the next, England will probably walk it. England will probably win the Grand Slam. They'll probably win the World Cup. And to be quite honest, if the Red Roses really wanted to, they'd probably win X Factor as well. But when you look at Ireland, how they performed today, it was actually on par with how England performed last week. And I think that's really impressive as well.
Oh, I'm scrolling down the feed on the Women's Six Nations stuff, and it's just I've hit the England versus Wales stuff. Well, I hate England so much, and I hate the Red Roses, and just because they're so good. And
well, that's fair.
And what I'd say about Ireland before we move off them is you're starting to see. I find it so fascinating how the DNA of nations rugby DNA manifests itself across all of its teams, and I thought that's the most like Ireland men I've seen Ireland women in terms of the amount of detail in their attack. France women remind me a lot of France men. There's a very distinctly French way of playing. Unfortunately, Wales women remind me a lot of Wales men, but for bad reasons. And Scotland women remind me of Scotland men in terms of they've got some really, really good players, but never seem to win. And England's Red Roses remind me nothing of England men because they're the best team in the world. But I don't really want to talk about it from a Welsh point of view. Look, it was still kind of in a thing with Wales women. I need to be careful what I say here, where you're not really allowed to criticize them because there's been so much off-field drama and stuff. But kind of like the big thing for last year was the environment and the contract negotiations, and both of those are gone now. So it's kind of like, look, Sean Lynn's had 2 weeks, which probably equates to like 6 or 7 training sessions in total that he's had. And he said after the game that we've taken on a whole new defensive system, which you could tell because there was very much some players who thought we were blitzing and some players who thought we were drifting. And that it didn't work. It didn't work at all. The attack was poor. And you kind of hope with, yes, it's a new coach. Yes, it's new systems. Yes, it's a couple of new combinations, but the bulk of that squad has played together now for a good 2 years. And you would hope that there would be a little bit more seamlessness to it, which there wasn't. So it's just kind of a like, I didn't expect you to win. I didn't really expect you to be within 20, but I kind of was hoping for a little bit better than that, to be honest.
Our expectations were low, kind of meme,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Look, England, as I said, if they don't win the World Cup, it will be probably the second biggest shock in rugby since they didn't win the World Cup last time. So
Canada are winning the World Cup, I can assure you.
Thank you
So,
for it.
but 21,000 over in Cardiff for this one, a record attendance, not just for a Wales women's rugby match, but for a Wales women's sporting fixture, full stop, which is fantastic to see. Congratulations, everybody, on that
I
front.
want to see Ireland on that track. We would have a long way to go for women's sporting fixture because they've got like 40,000 for soccer, 40,000 for ladies football, 30,000 for camogie. But I want to see them break their own attendance records very soon because that team deserves it. I've said it before, maybe I think the one thing about Belfast is they don't seem to get as big of a crowd, which it happens. But hopefully in either Dublin, Limerick, Galway, somewhere in the near future, they will
Well,
start.
the game against Scotland's at Musgrave Park, isn't it? So that's an
No, we're away
opportunity.
to Scotland.
Oh, are you? Oh, sorry, got that
It's
wrong.
England in Musgrave Park. That holds 8,000. It'll probably sell out eventually, but holds 8,000.
To be honest, I am told that the crowd in Cardiff was a very healthy portion of England fans.
Probably.
And then finally on France versus Scotland, just a kind of a bit similar to Wales, England, but less so, really. France just comfortable. They're a that's a great offload. They played some great stuff. They seem to be very comfortable in line break situations. I would say that France are the most comfortable in terms of knowing what to do when a line break is made. Scotland's attack, I thought at times was poor. I thought that their service off rucks and things, their ruck speed was unnecessarily slow, which they should be disappointed of. And the reason that I'm being harsh on Scotland is because they've got great players. Like their centre partnership is fantastic, Lisa Thompson, Emma Orr. So for France just to have it kind of that easy is a bit disappointing, really, to be honest with you. I don't know, Caolan, if you've got any extra views on Scotland or France, because France kind of felt like they were stagnating in 2024.
Yeah, well, that was kind of what we were saying coming into the Six Nations, that it looked like they'd kind of hit their peak maybe 2 years ago and it started to fall. But no, they've bounced right back. I think the only thing is, as you kind of said, like they have that power game, which is massive in the women's game. And I think you start to see it, especially with how you see how this game went, how last week went, and how Ireland Italy went. France, when they were at their best against Ireland, were just running over the top of Ireland, forcing them to make one-on-one tackles that they weren't able to make. They were a little bit looser against Scotland, fair enough, but again, same principles, run over the top of them. Then Ireland against Italy do the exact same thing. They're winning so many collisions, 90% of tackles made, like they were winning what felt like every single collision across the park. Got schemed open a few times. That's where you start to see the power difference. I think that's something France have to their advantage. They'd be very big pack, very punchy pack. And I don't think that they have stagnated. I'd still have some question marks going into the World Cup because they've had good Six Nations and have bad autumns before. So you can't say it's not a factor, but I think they'll be fine for second place. If I was to call it now, England first, France second, Ireland third.
I think that's probably correct. I don't see much wrong with that. Okay, that brings us to the end of this week's pod. So thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you to the Rugby A and C. Hopefully we'll get Ben back next time. There'll be no pod next week because it's European. Is it 2 weeks of Europe?
2 weeks of Europe, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no pod for the next 2 weeks. We don't cover Europe over here. It's just not our thing. So we'll see you when we are back with whatever hosting lineup we decide to have. So it just leaves me to say, enjoy the rugby and I hope everybody's team wins. Cheers.
No,
Cheers, guys.